Hello and welcome in the Sam and Cole podcast in the deep, hot, and rainy late June days in Jacksonville. Brought to you as always by Champion Cycling and great guys there to take care of you as far as anything on two wheels that needs your legs to get them going forward. They can take care of you. Sam, it has been it's been like we haven't had a hurricane in a long time, but this has been like extreme weather, lightning, thunder, rain, wind. We've had some crazy weather here lately, and I don't think we've had, not to get too much small talk here, but I don't think we've had this kind of weather in quite some time.
Not extended like this. And you know what's funny, Cole, is that when I moved to Jacksonville in 1981, we had either 10 or 12 consecutive days of 100 degrees or hotter actual temperature. And that's the longest stretch since then. But, you know, when it gets to be as it has been in the 90s, and then now it's going to be 96, 97 here coming up in the next few days. Yeah, it's hot. And when it gets that hot, where we are, the moisture in the air, the fronts coming through, the way the thunderstorms pop up, you're going to get some very violent kind of weather.
You know, it's really interesting to me what happens because June is the month that people probably spend the most time out of Jacksonville who live in Jacksonville. Kids are out of
June.
school. Yep. It's hot. They want to get out. I would say mid to late June, early July, probably the time that people spend the most time getting out of Jacksonville. And it's going to be interesting to me how this weekend turns out. We've got 3 events going on at the sports complex. And so as hot and, rain chances and everything else, Sharks, Suns, and Armada all play down there and all start within about a half hour of one another, I think, or an hour of one another. So going to be interesting. I know weather, and you know this as much as anybody, weather really impacts TV ratings quite a bit. Because if it's really bad weather, people stay inside and just watch TV.
And they watch television. That's exactly right. So this weekend is interesting. We'll start real quick with the Suns, start the second half. It'll be interesting to see if they win more games because clearly in the first half, they didn't have very much of a complete team, and the Marlins hadn't put much of a complete team here. I don't know if they're waiting for they're waiting for some of these guys to develop, or they're going to stick some guys here that they think are going to be competitive. But I mean, this is a team that went 9-20 in May and still sent 7 guys to the All-Star game. So it tells you about the idea of developing players and also who you're going to see here. I mean, you watch the Marlins these days. 2 years ago, 70% of their starting lineup was playing here in Jacksonville.
And it was easy to pick that Mike/Giancarlo Stanton was going to be a star and he was going to be a slugger.
Right.
And we could all see that. It's the other guys you go, oh, you went out there and watched them and you don't know necessarily that they're going to get up there, but even if they're good prospects, like Christian Yelich, for instance, you go, okay, yeah, looks like guy's a pretty good player, but you don't know what the plans are for him, and also sometimes it's the opportunities that come up there.
Right. Look at a guy like Andy Barkett, who of course was the Suns manager for 4 years, won a couple of championships, was called up when the 40-man roster was expanded by Pittsburgh, hit 373 in the majors in the month of September, and never got another look.
It's the old Moonlight Graham story, isn't it?
Never got another look because, like you said, the situation just didn't present itself. So
baseball and having called minor league baseball for 3 years with the Suns and also prior to that with the Iowa Cubs in Des Moines, and having covered Major League Baseball with the Royals, well, it's been 20 years now. But the guys who are trying to make it to the big leagues, they fall into one of 3 camps. The guys who are sure they're going to get there and it's only a matter of time, and there are not a whole lot of those. I mean, if they're going to be close to themselves. The guys who are doing everything they possibly can to improve and get better and to get that shot. That's the bulk of them. And then third are the ones that used to be in camps 1 or 2 and now have come to the realization that they're never going to be in the majors, but they just love playing baseball, so they continue to hang around in AA or AAA, and There was a guy who played for the Suns years ago named Chris Lindstrom, Lindy, and he was from Minnesota, and he was a catcher, and he was kind of a short, pudgy catcher, but he had a great mind for the game. He really caught a great game, but was never going to have the power or the bat speed or anything else to play in the big leagues. Was probably a little bit overmatched by a lot of Double-A pitchers, but he was just, he's like, listen, I'm gonna play as long as I can. I'm gonna coach as long as I can, and then see what happens. So
Terrell Hansen, Hansen, who played here 2 different stints with the Suns, who was basically Crash Davis. I mean, that's who he was. So
and it's there's a parallel, Sam, between those guys and like the Jacksonville Sharks, because those guys are also trying to make it to the NFL, but that pipeline has not been quite as rich a vein of talent for the NFL as it was 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, 10 years ago in arena football.
Well, and I think that that vein of talent position-wise is very small for who can go from playing arena football. There are some quarterbacks that are looking for that opportunity and to stay in the game. The most celebrated, Kurt Warner, obviously, but even the guy who plays for the Sharks right now is still has an NFL dream alive. I mean, Aaron Garcia realized that he wasn't going to go play in the NFL, and he was going to be a star in the AFL. But a lot of these guys still think that and obviously, if you're running that kind of offense, you have that in a 50-yard wide and 100-yard long field, then you have a chance. But a lot of these guys don't have the arm strength, don't have the foot speed, don't have the reading ability. Some of these guys maybe do, and maybe get an opportunity. So you got quarterbacks, occasionally you got wide receivers who have some speed, and we've seen guys get invited to free agent camps from the Sharks on a pretty regular basis, and some guys have a chance. But outside of that, no linemen who are currently playing in the AFL are going to go play in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a different game there. The running backs are usually 270-pound guys, basically right. Undersized offensive linemen who have decent feet. Usually that's what that guy is.
Craig
Nobody on
Hayward.
Defense, right. Basically, your Ironhead Hayward, right? Your poor man's Ironheads. Nobody on defense is going to translate because it's just it's a completely different style of defense that's played with this. With it possible, you might get a pass rusher from time to time, an outside pass rusher who might be able to do some things. But you're not facing double teams on the outside very often. It's a whole different thing. The one position that I'm surprised hasn't translated more is a guy who plays receiver or defensive back who's a return man. Because if you're a good return man in the arena game and you can make moves in a tight space with all those guys, you would think that would translate to the outdoor game more.
And the problem is that the overall speed in the NFL. I don't think people realize, and we've said this a million times. Do you know how good you have to be the last guy on an NFL roster? You got to be an unbelievable athlete to just be the 53rd guy on the roster. But the Sharks have put themselves back in position, although they lost to Tampa now twice. But they put themselves back in position, and maybe they get hot again and make a run for the playoffs, which I think I think Les Moss really. I mean, the team started 0-4, and they brought in a lot of new players. And Les, of course, had that incident where he burnt his feet, and he's had to kind of coach in a different situation. But for that game, he's got that game figured out, and the players figured out. And I think that you got to give him a lot of respect and a lot of credit for doing that, because I see other coaches in that league who aren't half the coach that he is.
No doubt. And of course, he learned from his dad, who was a great coach in the Arena League as well. So he's got it. He knows that game. He is a really terrific. He's a good football coach. He's a great arena football coach.
That's right.
So the common thread of these three events that are going on, talking about guys wanting to get to the quote unquote next level. And it's interesting that the Armada will face Boca Juniors, the top club in Argentina, and that's one of the top 25 clubs in the world. And
Absolutely.
so when you see what happens with this will be a great lesson for a lot of the Armada players. They may not see there are some of the players for Boca Juniors who are playing in the Copa America right now, so they won't have all of their top guys. And Tevez is rumored to be coming back, and he's not back yet. But they're going to have a lot of their starters in there, and at least for the first half or however long it takes before they start subbing people out, it's going to be really interesting to see how the Armada stacks up against those guys.
So my question would be, and you're working with the Armada almost every day. Are those guys trying to develop their game to go play in the MLS or to get signed overseas, or are they happy with being part of the NASL?
Well, it's interesting because every soccer player at every level, and I don't care if it's the EPL and La Liga or the MLS or NASL or the USL or whatever, always wants the next best deal, right?
Right, of course. Right.
Whether you're Messi or Eden Hazard or Cristiano Ronaldo or whomever, you want to get that next best deal. So I don't think it's the players think necessarily of moving up to a tougher league so much as they if a guy thinks he's a top player in the NASL, he's not going to think, oh, can I get a great deal in the USL? He doesn't want to go down, down
right.
a level in the same country. But if he says, hey, it may be a lateral move to, and I'm going to make this up, I'm not sure if this is a really good comparison of it being a lateral move, but if it's a lateral move to a team in the English third division,
right.
League One in England, then but the money's better, well, he might do that. Or if he knows the coach or has a good relationship with the coach there, whatever that is. Sometimes it's, they can be a little bit of kind of vagabonds. One thing that the Armada did was they signed their top players to multi-year deals so they could develop as a team
right.
here in Jacksonville.
Hey, I mean, it's even in the EPL, guys who are playing for Newcastle are looking for that deal with Man U.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
Or if you're playing, here's a great example. Peter Cech, who last year was the goalkeeper for Chelsea. This year, Thibaut Courtois was brought in, and Cech became the backup. And now he's going from Chelsea, the champions, and it looks like Arsenal is making a move for him. So he's going from the number 1 team to the number 2 or 3 team or 4 team, not top 4 team. And so, but he's going for the opportunity. So it's money or it's opportunity or it's wanting to play in a particular country or be in a particular part of the world or whatever. And because there are so many clubs around the world, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Right.
Of
How
clubs, a lot of choices.
Boca Juniors is coming here. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, because they're a like you said, top 25 team in the world. How is that they're coming to play the NASL team in Jacksonville, Florida?
Let me give you a couple of bits to underline how big a deal Boca Juniors are. 40% of the population of Argentina are fans of Boca Juniors.
Right.
It helps that they're in Buenos Aires and there's a lot of population there. But there are a lot of soccer
but Diego Maradona played for them. Right.
Diego Maradona played there and finished his career there. So that's a big part of it. They've won only one club has won more international cups than they have in the world.
Interesting.
And my favorite fact about the fervent fan base of Boca Juniors, there is a Boca Juniors cemetery that you, as a supporter, you can be buried in a Boca Juniors casket in the Boca Juniors cemetery. You can literally live and die with Boca Juniors.
Wow.
So,
holy smokes.
Talking about dedication. How do they get here? They actually had already agreed to between their season. They're in a mid-season break as well, just like the North American Soccer League is. They had decided they were going to train outside of the country, which a lot of the clubs do, and they wanted to come to the United States. And they had already made an agreement with the Fort Lauderdale Strikers to come up. So they were already going to be in South Florida. I think they may be training at IMG or someplace.
Right.
So they come up, and the Armada had been looking for a mid-season match after they got knocked out of the U.S. Open Cup. And this came up, and they were already here. Hey, it's an easy sell. I know that there were conversations with other clubs around the world, and some big clubs too. But the fact that they're already going to be here, and you could kind of do some cost sharing in terms of travel and so forth, and they were excited to be doing something in Florida, in the United States. It's a great opportunity for Boca Juniors to get their name out. They're not as exposed here as the EPL teams or the La Liga teams are because of TV. So
TV, right?
Timing was good.
Yeah, that's a big coup, I think. I mean, you get teams like that to play here. That's great. I've just been handed a little piece of news here that's not good. Florida State head football coach Jimbo Fisher announced today the indefinite suspension of freshman DeAndre Johnson for a violation of athletic department policy. That's a quote. Apparently, Johnson has been accused of punching a woman in a bar, according to one of the cable sports channels. So, guy who was Mr. Football, who has been a starter his whole life, who Fisher said was really developing as a player that was going to compete for that quarterback job at some point. I don't think this year because of the other guys that they had and added to the roster, but that's not good. If Johnson is indefinitely suspended, because there will be, there's been so much talk, and if it has to do with any sort of I don't know that this would be called domestic violence, but violence against women, that is it's bad to begin with, and it has been brought closer to the public's attention and to a lot of athletic departments and professional teams' attention here in the last year as well.
The fact that it happens in football and the fact that it happens at Florida State, where I think they're probably on a little bit of a, they've been through the Jameis Winston stuff, which
right,
but there's some sensitivity to that, and should be. Boy, that's unsettling news to hear that, and
it's not good because you never heard anything about when he was in high school. You never heard, didn't hear a thing about DeAndre. He was always the guy that was gonna go to Florida State because since he was in the 8th grade, basically. So, and Mr. Football and 6A, Mr. Football, I think it was. Kevin says 8A.
First coach,
7A,
right?
Mr. Football.
7A.
Yeah, first coach. Yeah. So.
All
right, good stuff. Looking forward to this weekend. We'll come back probably first part of next week. We'll talk more about the Jaguars as they are in, I guess you could call it their downtime, but they finished their camp, their mini camp, and where they are, where they think they are, where everybody else thinks they are, and what the realistic expectations are. We'll talk about that the next time on the Sam and Cole podcast. Again, thanks for continued support of the guys at Champion Cycling. By the way, they're open on the 4th of July. That's Saturday. And they'll also be open Friday at the beach store only. And it is a giant party. So if you're at the beach, you have any interest in that, go by. Apparently, it's awesome. I'm planning on going this year. That should be fun. Stopping to see Brian or Phil at any of one of the 3 locations, Mandarin, Arlington, or Jacksonville Beach.
Follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Kavaris. Follow me on Twitter at Cold Pepper. You can follow the subscribe on iTunes or on Stitcher. Also, if you're on iTunes, leave a review of the podcast if you like it. We appreciate that. If you don't like it, we'll leave it too, then we'll just delete it and act like it never happened. And we appreciate you listening, and hope you enjoyed it this time, and we'll enjoy it again in the future right here on the Sam and Cole podcast.